Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Ashley, they, them, and I'll be your friendly neighborhood and AGT support person today. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to message me in the chat or just send it to everyone and I'll attend to it. And I'm really excited for our webinar today, but first, we have a few things to go over. The NAGT webinar series, if you're new, or maybe if you're not new and you're back and want to hear about it a little bit more, is a one-stop shop for increasing our community's capacity in Earth education. Webinars in our series feature novel and innovative work such as Earth education research and pedagogy, new teaching materials, and the classroom and professional experiences of people just like you. The NAGT webinar series is free and open to the public. We often get questions about whether it's okay to invite your colleagues. Yes, please do. We'd love to have them. And throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the chat box as a place for discussion, questions, and comments. Additionally, feel free to use the reactions tab. Otherwise, in terms of interacting with each other, in our shared cyberspace, please remember that we do still follow the NAGT Code of Conduct, which expects and endorses a professional and respectful atmosphere and values diversity in creating an inclusive, supportive, and a collaborative environment. I'll drop that in the chat for you to review as you have the time. And today, we'll get into our webinar. Beth, Ellen, Sandrine, and Sean in spirit, not in cyberspace with us, will be walking us through some of the updated data-rich InTeGrate and GETSI activities and describe for us the new community contribution tool for submitting modifications to activities in the Teach the Earth collection. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to our presenters today.
Great, thank you so much, Ashley. I'm going to share my screen. Oops, hold on a second. And do it one more time because I need to make sure I do the options for audio. Okay. And so I'm Ellen Iverson. Is everybody seeing my screen now? Perfect. I'm Ellen Iverson. I'm the director at the Science Education Resource Center, CERC, at Carleton College. And I'm going to briefly have my team give a wave when I say their names, so you can. We're going to be handing it back and forth. Sean Fox is not going to be joining us synchronously, but you will see him. He's provided a contribution that I will be playing for you. Monica Bruckner is also at CERC. Beth Pratt-Situla will be presenting as well as Sandrine Sandrine, say Matiasek, and Sandrine will introduce herself so she will get her name correctly. I knew I'd get muffled. Anyway, we have a full agenda for you today. I'm going to be giving you an introduction to the project. We've got some examples of updated data-rich modules. So those of you who came to the webinar to hear what's been updated for InTeGrate and GETSI, you'll get a sense of that, and you'll get a sense of also how to figure out whether something's been updated. We have guidance that came out of a workshop this summer for building more robust data-rich activities. We're also going to be demonstrating the community contribution tool, which is something that's going to live on in the community, and we're really, really excited about that. And also an opportunity for you to ask questions and to do some more exploration on your own. So I want, before I move forward, for you to think in your head, if those of you who use Teach the Earth, if there's a teaching activity that you use off of the Teach the Earth site. It could be InTeGrate or GETSI, it could be something from an old cutting edge workshop, could be many, many workshops that have been developed over time by the community for the community. Think of a teaching activity you've used. Maybe you've had to adapt it. Maybe there's been something on the data that you had to do differently, or just a different context that you've done. So keep that in mind as we move forward with what we're going to share with you today. So why is it important to consider the value of having robust data-rich activities, teaching activities? This was a question that Beth, Rachel Teasdale, and who also is not able to join us today, and I had a couple Earth Educator rendezvous. We had lunch and we were puzzling over this. And really it is that we know that we have all these teaching activities that were developed by the community for the community, and the faculty contributors and authors may have moved on. They might, they've contributed to this and they're no longer paying attention to it necessarily. They might have different responsibilities. And they just have given their contribution. And so data sources for those projects may not have kept, may be different, right? So the activity has fallen behind of what's been provided. But we know that these activities have high use. Instructors are continuing to find them on the web. They're continuing to want to use them and adapt them in their classroom. So this project was sort of an answer to the dilemma and also the need. So a little bit about the CCT project itself. It's funded by the National Science Foundation. The co-PIs, Sean Fox, myself, Sandrine, and Rachel Teasdale and Beth Pratt-Sitchela. And Monica has been a part of the team this entire time. And our goals were threefold. One was to develop and test a community contribution tool. So this is a tool that we're going to share with you that's going to allow the community to take on some of this updating of materials through what you're already doing in the classroom. We wanted to offer a carefully constructed workshop that would test this tool, would update, integrate, and GETSI materials, and provide some faculty PD. We did that just this last summer at the Earth Educators Rendezvous. And we wanted to implement it and publicize it and disseminate the tool and what constitutes data-rich activities to the community. And this is part of that effort. So why did we focus on InTeGrate and GETSI? Well, we knew that there was a lot of material across all of these modules. They were designed in 2013, 2019, have a common design, common assessment. All of these had to follow a guiding principle and meet a rubric that would make use of authentic geoscience data. There's 40 some modules. We know that there's over 450,000 visitors per year from over 300 institutions. So these are continuing to be of high use. And we know some of the data sets and the links and the software that there's some need to update them. So we also have data that this was a need in the community. We had a survey that came out in 2022 prior to having the funding, where we surveyed authors, and then we did that again in 2023 with over 100 InTeGrate and GETSI authors. And you can see that nearly half are continuing to use the materials. Almost a quarter had stopped using it because of something that was outdated. And then where there were adaptations, you can see sometimes it was the data, sometimes it was the software, sometimes it was links, and sometimes it was just course content where they had to adapt it. We also had a student intern that worked for EarthScope that really rigorously looked through all these materials and found that 65% of the modules contained data sets that were more than 5 years old. And that nearly half, 43% of the modules, at least one activity or assignment really couldn't be completed either, or was very hard to complete because of something that was outdated, either a link or software. So we really saw a need. So with that, I'm going to turn it on to Beth, because I think she wants to get a better sense of you in the room, what you've experienced.
Hi, Beth Pratt-Sitchela at EarthScope Consortium. I have been a partner on the InTeGrate project, or an assistant, if you will, in some regard, and I've been a project manager for the GEOScience, now geophysics tools for societal issues. And I just wanted to launch a short poll so that we can just get a better sense of who everybody in the room is. So what do you do when you find out of date activities, and sort of a little bit on how you use activities in practice. All right, give it a few more seconds. Okay, sharing the results now. So when people have found out-of-date activities, what do they do? About a quarter of them are like, well, not worth it any longer, I'm going to stop using it. About 2/3 of the people, and again, people could the first one was single choice. About 2/3 of the people make changes for themselves, but there hasn't really been a good way to share it, right? So there's a way to share what you've done. You'll hear about that more over the course of this webinar. And a smaller amount of people have been able to publicize the changes they've made. And the second one, people modify, and this is something we've had in previous surveys, and it sounds like it's very clear here, either somewhat modify for their particular use case or their particular setting, and nobody uses these activities exactly as is. So thanks for putting that in. It's helpful to see the type of use that people are doing. I'm gonna stop sharing this now. And then if you could do the next slide, Alan. So in total, we took this as an opportunity with the workshop over last summer at the Earth Educators Rendezvous, and subsequent work by some interns and other community members. More than 20 modules have been updated in this process out of the 40 or so in the InTeGrate and GETSI collection. So for those of you who are not as familiar with the type of resources that are offered in these data-rich activities, there are ones from resources and the environment, hazards, climate, and interdisciplinary ones. So this is actually just a subset of the 24 or so that we've updated recently, but I just wanted to give people a sense for like, well, what do we mean by these type of activities? What's in them? So it's anything from tracking water resources, lead in the environment, water sustainability, major storms, landslides, ice mass and sea level change, carbon and energy resources, and some that are more cross-cutting, such as systems thinking. So there is a lot of different modules for a lot of different teaching needs. Next, Sandrine is going to showcase some of the challenges and ways we've overcome that in the process of updating the modules.
All right, so hi everyone, I'm Sandrine Matizek. I'm an associate professor in environmental science at Chico State, a colleague of Rachel Teasdale, and I was going to showcase a few examples of these updated modules for you and also give you an overview of some of the particular currency issues we encountered and describe how they were resolved. So the first couple examples are from the GETSI module titled Understanding Our Climate Change, or Understanding Our Changing Climate. And this is a data-rich module that consists of 5 units. In Unit 1 and Unit 5, students work on a stakeholder analysis from 3 different settings, the Maldives, Bangladesh, and Southern California, to enable them to explore the different impacts of sea level rise depending on geographic and socioeconomic factors. And then units 2, 3, and 4 are very data focused. Students gain considerable spreadsheet and time series analysis skills through these data-rich units where they explore the contribution of seawater thermal expansion to sea level rise. That's Unit 2. The contribution of melting ice sheets using GRACE ice mass loss time series. That's Units 3. And then the GPS, using GPS records of bedrock surface elevation to monitor snow and ice loading and unloading on decadal and annual timescales. That's Unit 4. So next slide, please. I'm going to show you examples of updates. So the snapshot, these snapshots of Unit 1 highlight some of the updates that were done during the EER workshop in July 2024. And I just wanted to kind of clarify that during the workshop, we made changes to the core module text and files without necessarily always using the CCT, the community contribution tool, but I will highlight when we did one or the other. In this case, on this page, you can see the revision history on top. The first red circle highlights the changes that were made during the workshop. And the main changes we made in this Unit 1 were updating broken links, as well as adding more up-to-date information on the 3 case studies. And we also tried to think about the robustness of these updates, their longevity, by adding publication years, for example, in the hyperlinks. So that's the 2 red circles at the bottom in the list of references. So just trying to be more explicit there. Next slide, please. All right, so for Unit 4, there were many updates that were done on the data sets of Units 2, 3, and 4. So this is a screenshot of the updates that were done on Unit 4, but they're quite similar for the other 2 data-rich units. Unit 4 centered on vertical bedrock GPS time series, and with these snapshots, you can see, so first here, the revision history at the top of the page with lots of updated files. And next click, Ellen, thank you. And then one of the major updates that we did was to expand the time range of all the data sets that were used. So we updated everything to 2024 in all the teaching materials, whether they were student materials or instructor materials. And then next click. In this example, I was also trying to highlight another type of challenge that was encountered. So in this specific activity, the reference frames for the GPS datasets had changed. So we had to update the presentation slides, the instructor instructions to reflect this change and help instructors navigate the dataset. So that's all up to date. All right. Next slide. The next example is another module we worked on during the workshop. It's the InTeGrate Environmental Justice and Freshwater Resources module. And in this module, students work with rainfall, topographic, and streamflow data using real examples to explore the water cycle. And they connect these components to environmental justice issues. So next. The screenshot from Unit 4 of this module, in this screenshot, you can see that we have the revision history on top of the page here with fixed broken links, showing how these were updated during the workshop. But then you also see that we made a community contribution using the CCT. And that's what you see in the lower screenshot here. In this case, we placed the updated data that was on water use statistics through the CCT as a CCT contribution. All right, next, please. And this slide introducing the same module, the InTeGrate Environmental Justice and Freshwater Resources module, but it's showing the Spanish version. So there's a Spanish language version, and notice how the red box highlights 2 units, sorry, that are different from the English version with case studies that are relevant to Latin America. Next, please. One of the challenges we faced for this Spanish version, so in the Unit 6 of the Spanish version of the module, one hurdle was that we found out during the workshop that the source of the data set was going to be discontinued. So USGS was not going to continue supporting this interface, this data source as of September. So what we did is we took screenshots and integrated them in a Word document that was turned into a student resource to try to save the data set and keep its longevity safe. And I'm going to pass it on to Beth.
So what you heard from Sandrine was this details about 3 of the modules that and sort of the struggles and journey, if you will, of taking these data-rich resources and updating them. In some cases, it had been nearly a decade since they were developed, or at least over 5 years. So one of the things that the community of 20-some people did during the workshop was put together guidance for the rest of the community. And I did just put the link into the chat. And so this lives on Teach the Earth page that people can consider if they're doing new activities, like how could we avoid some of these struggles going forward? How can we build better in the first place? And so the overarching two primary recommendations were, one, to use data sets from long-term, reliable, and accessible sources. And so I had already put a screenshot, I put a screenshot of the USGS, which has been very reliable on many things, although we certainly heard that they were not reliable on one aspect of international data. And the other is to provide really good documentation on how to update in the future, because even if you choose a great portal that's still there, if you don't explain how you would update it, then that's less useful to people that might come later. You responded in the polls within this group, and this is certainly what we've heard in the larger community, that people do work on keeping things current for themselves. And now we want to think about trying to leverage each other's work, as a community, and update for all of us going forward using the community contribution tool. Okay, next slide. So just to give a little bit more information about both of the two overarching recommendations, again, that were developed in as a group of community members last summer and refined over the fall. So what do we mean by longevity and accessibility of data sets, right? So they should be scientifically valid and well referenced and from a trustworthy source. Ideally, they are open access, long-term, and secure websites that are not behind paywalls, and that we hopefully can consider to be public indefinitely, especially if there's time series data. We've had a lot of things that haven't worked out when data has been pulled from papers, and then nobody ever does that analysis again, and then there's no real way to get back to keeping that activity current. It's especially good if the file formats can be something that's been long-term used by as many people as possible. So that could be Excel files, that could be CSV tab delimited files, or Word files, or Google files. Those are the sort of things that are transferable and last. When there is the need for analysis, it's ideal if it's a well-established software, again, such as standard word processing or spreadsheets or Google documents, or open source software, or ones that have other educational licensing that makes it accessible for people. Next slide. All right, so again, and then what is the documentation that's needed to adapt, modify, or update the activity? So this is a screenshot of one example of sort of notes or metadata that could go into, for an example, a spreadsheet of data. So include instructions for how to navigate to the data source. So URLs or a series of clicks that need to be done. How to acquire the exact same data set. You can see that this one lists the particular stations that were used, as well as they're in the different tabs at the bottom. Because if you just say, areas of Northern California basin, water basins, you're like, which ones? Like all of them north of San Francisco, or just certain ones in the Sierras? Like those can make it really difficult to duplicate a data set if it's not more clear. Recommended file formats, guidance on alternate sources, like keyword searches can be helpful if there's ever worry about URLs going stale. Required software and constraints, such as downloading, installation hurdles, make time to have the students get logins or things like that. If there's any operating systems that or browser limitations, that should be mentioned, like can you do it with a phone, or it only works on Windows OS? Those are important things to include. And then, and Sandrine mentioned this, she said like, oh, okay, we changed the data, and then we need to change the presentation, and then we needed to change the student activity. And so like putting down information about that so that somebody can find the different places that reference to those data turn up. And this is setting up future users to be able to update it more. And then we're going to encourage you to then share these wonderful updates and adaptations with your peers. Thank you. Ellen?
Great. So I'm going to get to share a video. So Sean Fox had planned to be here, and unfortunately on Friday he had some circumstances, so he wasn't able to be present. But he created a demo video that I'm going to play for you. But I wanted to point out before I start the video about the community contribution tool is what Sandrine was showing you on the history of updates that were made. That's also new. So besides the community contribution tool, some of you might be like, I never noticed that before, because it wasn't there. So one of the things that we've heard from people of using the Teach There is, how can this was put out by InTeGrate in 2016. How do I know if anything was updated? Well, now you'll know. Because you'll see that at the top. You've seen the things that have been go through the NAGT sponsored review camps. That has been long been on there, and when something was published. But the new thing is you will see when things are updated right at the top of the activities. All right, with that, I'm going to get out of the slide share here and go to the video.
You saw earlier how the community contribution tool was used. I think the example was a Women in Water activity, where the community contribution tool was the mechanism through which the availability of some new data sets was shared. I want to zoom out just a level and reflect on the community contribution tool as a whole. It's not just limited to GETSI and InTeGrate activities. In fact, the community contribution tool is something that's available on all 6,000 some activities that are on SERC-hosted sites. We know there are thousands of educators who've collectively used those activities, and we're hoping that their collective experience and how those activities went, the way they played out in their classrooms and the modifications and adaptations they made are something they can share back with their peers. We're imagining the community contribution tool can collect all sorts of different experiences. People may want to report how it worked in a different classroom setting or with different students with different skill sets. They may want to talk about how they used different data sets or different tools. They may have made other improvements or simply have a variation for a different setting that works better. They may also have ideas and guidance to share on what was most impactful about the activity, or here's a particular place where students run into trouble, so you'll want to watch and provide this sort of guidance. And of course, as we've already seen earlier in the webinar, the community contribution tool can be a mechanism where people who've found problems with older activities, an out-of-date data set, external link that no longer works, and have found their own personal workaround for it, can share those workarounds with the community so the activities can continue to be widely useful. So that's the core purpose of the community contribution tool, to allow sharing of hard-won expertise from folks who've been using our activities to their fellow educators. But how does this work in practice? It's actually quite straightforward. I'm going to go back to the Women in Water activity we saw earlier. Every activity on the SERC site now has a big blue button like this one that says share your modifications and improvements to this activity through the community contribution tool. Pretty straightforward. You'll find the same button is also down lower on the page in the tip sections. Here it is. And if you've used an activity and want to share your experiences or modifications, you just click the button. That'll take you to this form. The form you'll see is the URL of the activity you were at is pre-filled. There's some examples of sorts of things we're hoping people will contribute as community contributions, and the core of it is just this text box where you can type in what you found that you think your peers would benefit from knowing about. There's the option to upload files. Say you revised a student handout from the original activity and you think your revision might be useful to others. You can just select it off your local hard drive and include it here. You can give some indication of what sort of contribution you're making just to categorize it. If there are files you're including that should be private, for instance, an answer key, just make a note of that here and we'll take care of it. We have a mechanism for making files only available to instructors. If you have seen some issue to report that you don't want to include as part of your community contribution, say for instance you're sharing a new data set but you've also noticed a typo in the activity, you can just make a note of that here and someone on our end will see what you've written here. It won't be included as part of the actual public community contribution. There is a completely optional section here. If you want to, you can let us know about what sort of course you're using this activity with. this information in aggregate becomes really useful for us when we're trying to make the case to funders that having these sorts of materials on the website are of high value. The idea that actual instructors are making use of it is something that funders think is important. You'll provide your name and email address in the institution. Your name will appear on the community contribution just to give you credit as the person who's sharing with their peers. Once you hit submit, it'll come to our end. It'll be reviewed by a staff member, basically just to make sure it's not spam. We get a lot of spam submissions through our forms. And then your text will appear on the original web page. And it'll look just like this contribution we saw earlier. So you can see the name of the person who's submitted this contribution, the institution they came from, when the contribution was submitted, and whatever text they chose to provide. So it's as simple as that. There's a few other things that'll happen when you do make a community contribution. As we saw earlier, at the top of the activity, there's a information about the revision history, and the fact that there's a community contribution will be highlighted up there. You can actually see the details or even jump down to the contribution itself. It's also the case that when a community contribution comes in, people who are signed up to get notifications about this particular page will get an email saying, hey, there's a community contribution, you might want to come check it out. If you're interested in getting those sorts of notifications, so for instance, there's one or more activities that you use regularly and you'd like to know if one of your peers has some expertise and wisdom to share about it, it's straightforward again. In the upper right-hand corner of every page, there's an account link. You'll need to be logged in. Accounts are free. But if so, you can go to this account link and go to your favorites list and click the Add Current Page. This will add in this case, the Unit 4 Women in Water activity to my personal favorites, which will allow me as sort of a bookmark to get back here again. But if I click this box, it will do what it says. I will get email notifications whenever there are updates to this activity. So if I'm interested in knowing when community contributions come in for this particular activity because I use it, or maybe there's an activity that I submitted that I want to know if people are contributing about, I can just check this checkbox, click Add to Favorites, and I'll get those emails. So that's a quick overview of community contribution tool, how it works. Pretty straightforward. We're hoping that this tool will kick off a virtuous cycle where all those folks who've been benefiting from all these free activities across all these different projects will share their expertise back with the community.
Going back to the slides. So I think what Sean was saying at the very end was that our real hope for this tool was not just to use it this summer against InTeGrate and GETSI and update those materials, but to have a means as a community for us to share back with each other and not have it be a very labor-intensive process. As you could see from Sean's demo, it was simply, you might even have only a couple sentences of how you've tried it in a different way. And it doesn't have to be a new data set. It could be just you've used a different context, you've adapted it in some way. And we think that this will really help as a community for us. The value that I've heard again and again of the activities is that they were developed by people like you, for people like you. So having a means to be able to continue to contribute was really important to the work that we were doing on this particular project. I wanted to pause if there were questions about the community contribution tool. And then I think Beth's got some other ideas for discussion points and exploration for us. Are there questions on what the video that Sean just demoed for you? Randy.
Yes. Is there any way to request an update? Say there's something like one that I've run into in the past is I'm not an Excel person. So if the directions are using Excel, but there's a new version of Excel out, can I request a revision, an update, so the students have updated instructions for using Excel or whatever it was?
Sure. That was one of the things that we talked about when we were working through this with InTeGrate and GETSI too, with suggestions, is that would be something that you could put on the community contribution tool as asking of the community. Here is the challenge that I have run into with this activity. if anyone has made an adaptation to it, please, contribute it. It could be a way for you to ask for crowdsourcing. Beth, you had another idea.
Well, I guess, but I would also say the majority of the projects that have produced teaching resources that are on Teach the Earth or InTeGrate or GETSI are not currently funded, and the authors are not on the hook to do any more updates. And so we're at a point where this is, what would you say, community infrastructure, and absolutely put in a request if you have one, but actually we're all responsible for keeping it up to date. And so if you go through the legwork of like updating it for the most recent version of Excel, please share it, because nobody is ultimately responsible for it anymore. Or in many cases, we'll just say.
It was a great question, though. Other questions? Well, one of the things I asked at the beginning was to think in your head about an activity that you might have used on Teach the Earth in your teaching. So I'll pause a little bit longer for questions, but get that idea in your head again. Okay. And I'm going to have us move forward, but if you do think of a question, you can please put it in the chat as well. Beth?
Yeah, so I thought we figured we would be ending a little as far as the talky part of this before the end of the hour. And we thought this would be a great chance for folks that, this community of users that are here, just to put something in. So you've thought about that. Ellen has said, think about something, either a topic or a module that you are interested in or you've used that you might like to discuss in any way or think about again. So go ahead and put those into the chat. I think it'd be interesting to see what different people here are focusing their teaching on. So go for that. We'll pause while people are typing. And I did just put the links in to InTeGrate and GETSI, which you've heard us mention a bunch, and also more widely the Teach the Earth collection. So writ large, those are the backbone of the resources that are part of the community contribution tool effort now.
And even if you can't think of the exact teaching activity, but like, I know
yeah, water or
I use a lot of them.
Earthquakes.
Yeah.
And again, here, I put this up earlier, but I know we've had some people join. Another thing is on our webinar page is the complete list of all of the recently changed modules, recently updated, and it's more than 20. So if you're interested to sort of see and you haven't joined the community for those yet to get updates in your favorites, like Sean was mentioning, that's another place you could potentially navigate to. Okay, I'm not seeing people put things in chat. That's totally fine, but I am going to strongly suggest that you navigate to something, in the last set of links that we provided here, and use it as an opportunity to think, hey, what am I interested in teaching, or what was that thing I stopped using? Is it more recent now? For your planning going forward. I see that Carrie, thank you very much, Carrie, has put in a link to something on the GETSI site. So that link that she put in is to the overview page, and it looks like she's doing the earthquakes GPS and plate motion. So that's there's a couple different modules there. It looks like she's doing the intro one, so that's probably measuring the Earth with GPS, which is a fun interdisciplinary one. So thanks for putting that one in. And that one is definitely one with time series that need to be periodically updated. Ooh. Challenge that I'm facing is how to teach data with students who primarily use mobile devices. This, I think, would be something to crowdsource, because this group of 25 that we have here would definitely have some experience with this request from students. Does anyone want to chime in with recent thoughts on that? Feel free to unmute yourself and talk, or raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable with.
The way I am handling it is that, and it's been a multi-year process, but we ordered a class set of laptops. So I will, once I can actually get them delivered, the college has them, but I don't, then be able to use them.
That's great. I mean, I don't know about the university level, but at many K-12 level, you know, so my high school students, I have two of them right now, both were just given devices for loaning devices from their high school. So I think in the secondary level, at least, that has become more and more common as a way to handle actual computer access when students don't have it. But I guess, Randy, is that the case where it's just when they're in your classroom and not necessarily when they're doing homework, or would they be able to take them away?
It would be just when they're in the classroom.
Okay. Oh, there's somebody, Kelly contributed in the chat that she loves using Google Earth tools, but unless they have a computer to do the full pro version, there are fewer tools they can use on the web-based version. So it sounds like, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, you know, like hopefully you can get them to use a computer, but if not, see if there's ways to adapt the activity for more web-based tools. So John Zayak is saying, I've been looking for the ice core example I used in Earth history and can't find it. Hey, John, do you want to unmute and say more? Maybe I don't know enough about the ice core example to see if we can help you triangulate on that one.
Oh yeah, I feel like it came from here, where like I try and in Earth history have their labs like circulate around data, because like it's all the majors have to take it. So whether they're, you know, following me into volcanology, or they're going, you know, into climate change, or one of the other disciplines that we deal in our department. But it's one where you can actually have them calculate sea level change, because it like had the oxygen isotopes. Anyway, there's lots of them that I've used, and that was just the one that I was thinking of, because like again, I pick and choose parts of each of them to mix into all of the labs that I do. But I think this Google situation and the tablet, since I have the mic right now, I think it's a good thing for all of us to think about, because Chromebooks give the same problem, right? So if they have Chromebooks, then the ability to use full software and data capabilities also gets in the way, and especially with Google Earth, because Chromebooks you can't install Pro Google Earth on.
Right, which may speak to something in our robustness guidance wanting to almost suggest, like, if it's browser based, it's probably going to work for more people, is right?
Yes.
That won't always solve the mobile problem, but it should solve the Chromebook problem. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't have an exact answer for your ice core question, but I just pasted in again the link which takes you to our to the list of things that this project has focused on recently, and there are like 6 climate related modules. So my first thought would be like, look around in there and see if the activity that you've misplaced is in that list, or go to, you know, GETSI or InTeGrate and look at the climate modules that are there, because there's a number of, there's a few more, but almost, and Teach the Earth also has some as well.
We're also the search engine, the search engine on Circuit is continuing to improve. We've been, the back end of it, Sean could have talked more about that. So search for it and see if you're landing on search results that might get you closer, because we're starting to implement some of the, on the back end, using AI in the back end to help improve the search engine.
And if you, for those of you that are on a GETSI or InTeGrate page or any other page that is from Teach the Earth, if you go down to the bottom, there is, I don't even know, maybe if you stop sharing for a sec, I could go ahead and share, just so that it's not just me blabbling. There we go. So here I am on the GETSI, which is now, I should probably mention, Geophysics Tools for Societal Issues. It started out as GEODSI, which is a brand of geophysics. If I'm down on the bottom of this page, it's showing pages that you might like. And this is part of the Compass program project, which is another thing that Sean and Cirque have worked on. So it's saying, okay, recently you've been on certain places, and so we think you might be interested in these other certain places, right? And then if I were to go into a climate change module, it could start to take that into, see it's loading. And so it's going to start to select things that they think might be in the same sphere of interest. Anything else you want to say about that? Because you know more on that, Ellen, but I think that's maybe what you were mentioning a little bit.
Yes, that's great. And then John, was able to find and posted the link for the ice core. So that's great.
Yeah, the search worked really well. I should have just thought of that in the first place.
Awesome. Yep. We've been really improving it the last couple of years. So good.
That's great. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. So I can look at the chat to see what else has come in. Somebody else was saying anything focused on groundwater, water and agriculture looks very relevant. I can say there's one on GETSI called Eyes on the Hydrosphere, which also has a whole unit on groundwater and different ways to measure it with both sort of local measurements and satellite measurements. And so that would be one you can find in the top of the GETSI page. So again, Eyes on the Hydrosphere. Liz mentioned that the ENSO anomaly data, I can't find the link at the moment. So was that from a particular module, or that's sorry, I'm not 100% sure. Liz, if you want to unmute and ask that question, maybe we can crowdsource this one too.
I'm trying to remember where it was from also. I modified it heavily, but it's like anomaly, like sea surface temperature and wind anomaly data that were used to like as maybe a lab or activity for people to try to understand El Nino, right, and La Nina events. So it's been a while since I tried to look for it, and I was hoping that there was a source where we could at least get data from beyond 2001 or something, right? Because a lot of these people now have been born after that, so it seems old to them. But I will try to look more here.
So I guess I'll just say, so this is me on oh wait, no, I'm not. Am I sharing? I am sharing, I think. Yeah. Okay, so this is the Teach the Earth, which is sort of the writ large search. So I'm just gonna go look for ENSO. And what this will show, like obviously you're like, oh, I'd kind of rather not look through 149 options, but the search will be ranked, will be ordered based on the level of review and vetting that it has. So the ones that will show up at the top will be ones that have been reviewed by one or more processes and have come up as higher rated, exemplary, or very, or good. And so hopefully in the first couple that you have here might help you find the one you're missing, or maybe one that's even more recent and would be more useful. So, let's see. going to take a quick peek with it. Monica suggested one a couple back on one of the InTeGrate modules with a case study on climate related things. Let's see. Training on another good one. Thanks, Sandrine. I don't know. Do you want to elaborate on that? How
Not
you handle that?
necessarily. It was tangential. Yeah. No.
But I think it's good. I mean, so what do you do to help students
Yeah,
who
I
are
guess-
sort of cloud natives
Yeah, it's
think about a
something-
file structure?
Right. It's a trend that I noticed this academic year, and I've been talking about this with colleagues here, where it's obvious that students are tech savvy, but they're used to working on tablets. They're used to working on the cloud, and they're very clueless when it comes to saving files locally, renaming files, and so on. So it's just kind of become interesting to realize that when I'm using data-rich activities, I really need to remember to first teach that part. And so I don't know how that relates to all of these updates, but maybe something to think about.
Awesome, thanks. I mean, this is a great opportunity for people to share challenges and successes, if you will, or incremental progress. At this point, I'll say, are there any last questions or comments? Or needs? Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. I will pass it back to Ashley and they will close us out.
Yes, thank you. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared again so we can all see my final slides. Not that one, that one. Great. Thank you so much, Beth, Ellen, and Sandrine. This was a really wonderful webinar, and thank you everyone who joined us today. While this event does not offer official continuing education units, if you'd like an email confirming your attendance today, please complete the evaluation survey to get the link to the confirmation form, and I'll send that link in the chat. You'll be able to find the resources and recording from today's webinar on the webinar page. Please hold tight for a few days for the recording processing as we send out the video for captioning to make it more accessible. And please join us for the next webinar on March 3rd, attended Effective Domain Mini Lessons in Introductory Geology classes, where we'll learn about best practices and research-based approaches to teach concepts related to the intersection of math and geoscience through effective domain lessons. And finally, on my slide, there's a link to the webinar series homepage where you can find the webinar schedule, the archive of past webinars, and information about our sponsoring projects and programs.
All right, thank you, everybody.